It appears we are live. Hello, welcome to the Telling Truth Through Fiction panel. And this panel was kind of inspired informal conversation that one of our panelists, Simon Van Booy, and I had a while back about honoring real people in fiction. Hi, Andy. And how you do that, and how challenging that can be, and so we have three authors with us today who have done that in different ways, used the real people or composites of people or ancestors in some cases, people that are still alive now, to craft novels, to as the inspiration for their books. And so I'm going to start with the introductions with Simon first. And I fell in love with Simon's books 1,000 years ago, it seems like now, with Everything Beautiful Began After, which I've personally sold, I think, 1 million copies of. So I love that book, and we carry it all the time at Fountain if you want one. And all of Simon's other books too. He's got very well known for his short fiction. He also writes some nonfiction. He's won the Frank O'Connor Short Story Award, and is joining us from, you're in New York, correct? Is that where you are right now?
I think so.
You think so?
I haven't opened the curtains this morning, so I think it's still New York.
and so that's welcome, Simon. And then we have Diane Wilson, who I'm meeting for the first time. Hello, Diane. It's nice to meet you. And she is, and I wanted to mention that Simon's new book, excuse me, let me go back a minute because is called The Night Came with Many Stars. Though the night that I'm staying up very late nights reading my preview copy of it, so the night does come with many stars, but I'm mainly looking at Simon's book right now, and it's keeping me up quite late at night. It's so good, it's so moving, and it is by our friends at David R. This is embarrassing. I've bought David R. Godine books for years, but I've never known whether it's Godine or Godine. I don't know. Maybe we can have that question answered sometime today. So The Seed Keeper is Diane Wilson's book, and it is from Milkweed Editions. We love our friends at Milkweed, and they do a beautiful job of publishing everything from their two poets here from Milkweed as well. And Diane is the next tab over. And Diane is the author of a memoir called Spirit Car, also from Milkweed, I believe. And the subtitle is Journey to a Dakota Pass, which won a Minnesota Book Award and was selected for the One Minnesota Read program. That's a big honor. And she is here to talk about her book, The Seed Keeper, which is, and maybe she'll talk a little bit about the differences between writing memoir and writing fiction, somewhat inspired by real people. And then it's just lovely to meet you. And then my friend Jill and I had a wonderful rehearsal for the last event she was supposed to have with Fountain Bookstore. Jill has, just to get the CV out of the way, she had her first novel published before she was out of college, and she's had so many more since, been collected in Best American Short Stories, and her books have been, most of them have been New York Times notable. She's just a darn fine person. She is one of my favorite people to spend time with in person and in this way. And we had this spectacular rehearsal and talked a lot about hieroglyphics, which is new in paperback. And then the night of the event, 15 minutes before the event, I got violently ill. And I had to be replaced by Andy, who I believe is in the audience, who did a wonderful job. And I haven't even had a chance to watch the recording, but I'm sure it went marvelously because Andy's actually much better at this than I am. So aren't you sad that you got stuck with me and not on one of the other panels? So we're going to have a good time, though. I have some questions I'd like to start out with Diane. What was the seed that started the Seed Keeper?
Thank you, Kelly. It's a great honor to be here, especially with Simon and Jill, whom I haven't met before. So really thrilled to meet you, at least virtually. The seed for the Seed Keeper was actually a story that I heard maybe 20 years ago when I was participating in an event, and it had to do with Dakota women who are, this is a tribe in Minnesota, and back in 1862, they were about to be removed from the state following a short war, and they were sowing seeds in the hems of their skirts and in their pockets in order to protect them. And it was that seed that burrowed into my subconscious, and I carried it around, and then finally decided that I was going to make a novel out of it. So from story to story.
Cool. And Simon, same question.
Also with yourself, Kelly, and Diane and Jill. It's been a long time since we saw each other, so it's nice to be in the shop, so to speak. When I was in my late teens, I left school at 16 and I was playing rugby, and that was going to be my career. I know I've atrophied significantly, but I was offered an American football scholarship to play at a college in Kentucky, running back, and I've always loved American football. It's sort of like barbarism meets chess, and anyways, I took the scholarship, and I went there, and I pretty soon realized that I was completely inferior to everyone else on the team. I don't know why they'd even asked me to come. So I made friends outside of the football team, and took me home with him for the weekend, and I met his family. And over breakfast one morning, I was asking his mother about her father, and she said, "Well, he wasn't a very nice man." And I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Well," I thought, maybe he was like a bit grumpy or something, But she said, "Well, I don't know how many people he killed exactly, but." And I thought, "Oh, that's interesting." So that stuck with me. And then I'm in my late 40s now, so this was quite a long time ago, and all through the years, I've kept in touch with this family. So for the last 30 years or so, I've been writing taking their stories, and whenever I visit, they tell me something new. And finally, I was able to get them down and weave them into a kind of novel. So it really started just with chit chat over, Jimmy Dean sausage, which I can't eat anymore because of high blood pressure. But that's sort of how it started.
I'll get this mic meeting thing down shortly.
Yes, thank you, Kelly. I'm so glad to see you feeling well, and Diane and Simon, a pleasure. The Jimmy Dean sausage, you clearly have spent a lot of Southern time. So many of the stories I find that I have relied on and weaving in came from being a child and listening to the older relatives. It's a great gift for somebody who wants to grow up to be a writer, just to be surrounded by stories. And I have found that if there's a central theme in my work, I think it is that of memory, and the way no two people tell it quite the same way. So I was always fascinated by the way my grandmother and her younger sister would tell the same story in totally different ways, with often completely different results. And then in later years, just witnessing various loved ones kind of entering that realm of dementia, where I'm always wondering what's fact and what was fiction, even within the memory. And so a lot of times on the page, I think I begin with something that was told as as kind of a truth, but also mystery around the exact details. And so I find I can go back to the same touchstones again and again and again, and start over.
Of your books bounce back and forth in time a bit, you know, and that can be a tricky thing to navigate for an author or covering extended period of time. Simon, yours goes from the 1930s to 1980s, back and forth, following different characters. And Jill, you're following, you're having recalls of, it's been a year and a half since I read your book, Jill. They're having recollections of their past in the present day. And Diane, I know your book follows several generations, does it not? Is that correct? That's correct. So maybe starting with Simon this time, why was it important for you to tell the story in these two, in the two different time frames? And if there's more than two, I haven't gotten to them yet, so forgive me. So I've got the 30s and the 80s right now.
Yeah, and I think the book starts around 1920 and goes to about 2020, and stays within the same sort of 3-4 counties in Kentucky that I'm particularly familiar with. And you know, Diane and Jill will understand when I say this, but you know, in order to have the two viewpoints, I had to sacrifice pacing. So in order to have like just one continuous third-person point of view throughout the book, you know, the pacing would have been sort of good, you know, normal, consistent. So to switch though between point of view, I knew that I, you know, would be relaxing for the reader, but I decided to do it because it gives two windows into childhood 50 years apart. So the first chapter is Carol in 1933, and then the second chapter is I'll say it's her grandson in 19 years later. And it just shows what it was like growing up in Kentucky 50 years apart, and just what were 13-year-olds interested in. I mean, if I did it now, it would be, you know, even more. I mean, I didn't have the skill to have a teenager now because, to be honest, I'm out of touch with teenagers now. But in the 80s, of course, I was young. And so I wanted to give that. And then as when Carol is, you know, 18, her grandson is 18, you know, and so we show the different lives that they had simultaneously. And then, so 3/4 way through the book, we come to a sort of a present, and then we continue in the same time frame because we've caught up in a way. Childhood is over. So it's sort of in real time, so to speak. There's no more flashbacks, which you'll come to, I suppose. It's funny, nothing's perfect. Everything feels like it's a bit chaotic. And I've never felt like I've ever really been able to conquer a book. I mean, I've got close, but when I hand it in, I'm like, this is the absolute best I can do, you know, instead of having to tinker on it for the next 10 years. So I feel like people who are writers out there, if you don't feel like your book is perfect, you know, I think that's quite normal. Just for me, I just do the best I can with the skills I have at the time.
Jill?
Yeah, well, with my latest novel, Hieroglyphics, it's very much, as I was saying, a memory piece, a woman looking back over her life and many of the scraps and memories, and trying to look back and understand a lot of things, and also kind of editing what she does and does not want her children to know. And her husband is also a point of view character. So I have that older generation, and then each of them, for the backdrop, they both were really shaped by the early loss of a parent. And that's what brought them together, what they had in common when they first met as a young couple. His father died in a train wreck, based on a real crash that happened in my native county of North Carolina. and her mother went out one night, not saying where she was going, and was at the Coconut Grove nightclub the night it burned. And so they both had these childhood losses with a lot of unexplained, area around the lives of these parents that they really did not get to know. And those real events were what inspired the novel, because in both cases, it's now very hard to go and find any trace that this catastrophic event happened here. In Boston, there's a little plaque in a sidewalk, but a parking garage and a hotel covered the space. And with the course of the train wreck, there's nothing to mark it, even though, it was front page news across the country and many lives lost. And in both cases, what people were connected to their families or identified by those tiny objects we think nothing of, something in a pocket, a kind of shoe, a dry cleaning tag. And I just found it very moving and personal, those details. And that really is what inspired my the work with this woman character, Lil, because suddenly all those little things that we throw in the trash can every day in the aftermath of such a thing, or over time, looking back over a life, things that appear so insignificant, become some of the most important objects. So the novel, I think, in many ways is about that, those things, what we leave and what gets lost along the way.
Diane?
Oh, it's just so interesting to listen to other writers talk about their work and how they
Isn't
put
it?
stories together. Then I have to think,
Tired
oh
of it.
yeah, and then what about my book? So I actually, this is my first novel. So I had a main character, and at first she was going to be the primary narrator, first person for the entire book. But I also had that story that of the women back in 1862 who had protected those seeds. So there was a big question of how I was going to run a story between 1862 and 2002. And so as I continued to develop the work, other characters appeared who then could pick up different aspects of the story. And I found that some of the limitations of doing that first person narrative could be balanced by another character who then can be reflective of that first one. And that was helpful. And then it was also, I really love the way juxtaposition works between different elements. And so it allowed me to mix up and break up these stories so that there was a thematic connection between one character and an era with a different era and a different character, so that through that I could show those seeds that began with these women who had protected them essentially with their lives. And then through these various characters, you also see this line of the seeds moving through generations, and how that relationship with them evolves from women who protect them at all costs to ensure the survival not only of the seeds, but also their families and their communities, all the way to the main character whose family has come to the edge, the far edge of assimilation. And so that she has this is Rosalie Ironwing, and she has no connection to seeds at all in the beginning. Her family has come down to her. They've lost the language, they've lost the connection to their identity. And so it is very much a story about relationships and how you preserve what is most important to you. And that rekindling a relationship with something like seeds is also a way of bringing you back home, bringing you back to your community and your family. So I have to say, as a writer, it was great fun. It was a really lot of work to figure it out, but you know, that's why we do it, right? We want to challenge ourselves. So yeah, thank you.
Speaking of challenging, Jill's already brought up the subject of memory and people having different recollections of the same event or changing recollections of the same event. And Simon, you know, I know that, well, I'm, you know, full disclosure, my daddy's family is from Eastern Kentucky and the whole part of the world where Simon is his book is set, and I don't know if any of it takes place in Pike County or areas around it, Hazard and so forth. But my people from that area have a little bit of a tendency to elaborate or, you know, they're storytellers by nature and love to make a story, you know, good or better. There's one I tell about I guess the oldest of us was maybe about 12, and and it involves a bunch of pine trees and a semi-automatic weapon. And I think I was about 7 when this particular incident happened, and an 8-track tape player playing Afternoon Delight. That's what it was, actually. And no adults for miles around on the side of a hill somewhere. Well, anyway, that was entertainment back in the day. And, you know, and I don't need to tell the rest of that story because it's probably not suitable for all viewers. But so when you're telling stories, I mean, there's a certain freedom that you have when writing fiction, as opposed to writing like your memoir, Diane, where you have to be more faithful to the truths. And so when you came to making these decisions about, you know, decisions about memory and decisions about stories, how did you do that? And we'll start with Diane, since she's got the two that can.
So the way I think about my own work, it's almost always a combination of story and history and science and, you know, a good stew pot of different elements. But so even in the memoir, there was a lot of story, despite the fact that it is a true story. It's a factual story, but told with a lot of storytelling elements. And at the same time, the novel is a story that's told with a lot of historical elements and a lot about seeds and gardening. And so for me, that's part of the fun of it, is to bring them all together. But if there are elements that I really want the reader to take in a certain context, then what I did in the afterword was detail what can be relied on as factual, and that would be all of the historical elements from the 1862 Dakota War. And so I do put an afterword in there just to orient the reader to what you can rely on as fact, and then the characters and everything else are fictional, and, you know, don't be reading yourself into the book. So it's always a blend for me.
Jill?
I like Diane's stew pot. I feel very similar to that. I actually, Kelly, thought you were going to say you shot Afternoon Delight, but anyway, sometime I'd love to hear the end of that story. No, you know, I think Diane's answer is very similar to what to what I would have to say. I think in the case of this novel, especially, I felt a responsibility to get the facts right around the train wreck and the fire, with the idea that such events are important to be remembered, because that's what stands as a kind of memorial, in a way, to a lot of these lives, you know, that were lost. And it's very easy for those stories to be talked about sort of in the biggest news account. And then there's the other story of all the individual lives affected, and the reverberations across the generations of the children of people, and so on. And so I used some real facts in the background, but I did not assume the lives of any of the real people. The one, I made reference to them, but they were not my characters. But I did use the real name of a man who has passed away and did during the writing of the book, but we had exchanged letters. He was actually an Eagle Scout and ran telegrams in the aftermath of the train wreck, and back and forth as people were trying to connect. A lot of the people on the train were actually from New England and New York. And so that, you know, he spent days doing that. And this was a man I had known my whole childhood. And, you know, here was this little thing in his own life that I only learned when I was working on the book. So that was pretty wonderful. And to give him that cameo in there was a lot of fun for me.
That I always like to give a little added value to our audience, and that is called bowdlerizing. Is that the word, when you use a real person's name as a character? It's got a name.
I'm not sure. Does anybody?
It's a thing. People actually auction them off. You know.
Well, I've done that. I've done that before.
Yeah, well, you've done something that has like an official name that I don't know how to pronounce. But I will tell you the rest of that story over a drink sometime. But just so you know that there's no awful secrets. The 12-year-old was the only one that handled the actual weapon. So, you know, that was probably fine considering the circumstances. And the only ones hurt were some innocent pine trees. So that part, but it does lead me to my next thing for Simon. So we're talking about the people and because I'm particularly sensitive to this group of people that you're portraying in your novel, there's been recently a lot of romanticizing of the Appalachian culture, and maybe some glossing over of the issues of poverty and the treatment of children and so forth. And you cover some pretty heavy stuff in your book regarding that. And so, while honoring the people that you're friends with, that you made friends with and have been in contact with over the years, how is your interaction with them with regard to looking to portray that culture?
That's a good question. You know, I seem like an unlikely person in Kentucky, you know, seeing as I left, you know, central England to go and live there. And, you know, after never having visited American cities, just going to the rural, you know, parts of Grayson County. But, you know, my mother was an immigrant from the West Indies to Ireland when she was about 7 or 8. So she, you know, she speaks with an Irish accent, and she spoke patois coming to Ireland. So, and then she moved to England and met my father, who was Welsh, you know, from the valleys. And and then we moved to central England, and so we were not really accepted by the local community. There was something about us that was too foreign, too exotic. Not just the antagonism between the English and the Irish was quite significant in the 1970s and 80s. And so I never really, my parents worked many jobs to send my brother and I to good schools because they thought they didn't have any education themselves. Well, they left school at 11. So they sent us to these schools where we were sort of looked on with a lot of suspicion, and we weren't really accepted. And when I went to Kentucky, I was accepted from the first moment I got there. I was offered jobs, I was offered meals, I was offered churches, I was offered guns, I was offered anything. People were kind of, I'd never had that experience ever in my life, and I haven't had it. I've traveled a bit, and no one has been so kind to me and just so accepting of me as the people I met in rural Kentucky. And, and a football team is racially diverse, so it was everybody that, I got to go home with on the weekend. I really got to see a cross-section, and I really, really grew to love these people, and I really wanted to write them in all their, all their realness. They say that about the Irish that, they're best, they're the best people, but at their worst, they're the worst people. And I feel like rural Kentuckians are a bit like my mother's family in Ireland. There is quite a similarity there, strangely, the storytelling, but also a lot of the brutality. If a community doesn't like someone, if somebody is being difficult, they will kill them. And I found a lot of, maybe not nowadays, but certainly in the 1920s and 30s. So I included a lot of things which are brutal, which are based on stories that were told, but also these moments of redemption where just the kindness of people and people willing to risk their own lives for strangers. I saw a lot of that. One story in particular, I went down to Texas during spring break, and I lost all my money, and I had to hitchhike back, and as when I got to the Kentucky border, hitchhiking hadn't been easy. And when I got to the Kentucky border, this old pickup truck stopped, with holes in the floor, and a grizzly man who was probably only in his late 30s, a long beard, just looked at me, and he just sat there, and he said, "Ain't you gonna get in?" And so I got in, and there's a truck ride in the book which is mildly based on this old man who picked me up, and he said, "Where are you going?" And I told him, and he said, "That's like 100 miles away." And he said, "I'm going to consider it." He says, "But we got to go and eat." So he took me to his house, and I met his wife and his daughter and her daughter's husband and the kids. And we drove down this dirt road, probably 10 miles. And when we got to the house, there were all those like plastic sun-faded children's toys, you see, and there were old cars with parts and some of the windows didn't have plastic. I mean, this was poverty that I hadn't seen before. They sat me down and they gave me a tray with all this food. And there was even one cigarette and a lighter there for after the meal. After I'd eaten, we got back in the truck and he drove me all the way. And when we got to the sign that said the town, he stopped at the sign and dropped me at the sign and said, "Well, here you are." But on the way, he'd said, "If you need a job, I work in a sawmill." And he says, "I bet the guys would get a kick out of you being foreign, So if you need a job, and we'll find you a place to live." Just that I was nobody from nowhere. I could have been a murderer. And just this acceptance of a complete stranger to take home where the kids are. That really, really made me realize I've got to get this book right. I can't, what's the word, caricature these people, because it's going to come, I just don't want to do that. It would be an insult to them. And so really a lot of faith and love for Kentucky and for these people was what really was the engine driving this narrative.
Yes, it is the truth. They will give you the shirt off their back. Just incredible people out there, and I am having a lot of feels right now. So So let's talk. We just have a few minutes left. I think Simon's expressed his desire for what he's trying to accomplish with the release of this novel, which comes out in a few weeks, and I truly, I really want you all to buy all these books. I am not joking. I'm a little bit pushy as a moderator that way, because I know good stuff when I see it, and when I experience it, and when I've just barely dived into the Seed Keeper, and but Hieroglyphics was great, and Simon's new book, whose title I will get eventually, like I did get Everything Beautiful Began After. I will get it straight. So somebody remind me what the title is. Somebody in the audience surely will help me out. Or Simon, you could tell me that way.
I forget too.
The night
of the characters sometimes.
Something stars. Anyway, we'll get it's in the bookstore. That's in in that link below your screen, or in the expo if you want to go check it out. You can pre-order it from us, and I'll throw something extra in if you get any one of these 3 books. I haven't decided what that is yet, but I'm the boss and I can do that. So I don't know what it is. It's going to be a marvelous surprise, and you don't even know what it is yet. And I don't either, but I'll figure it out. So, so if you can, to finish up that, so we know what Simon's goal was in this, in making this novel happen. And so you had a purpose, each of you, Diane and Jill, when you set out to write your books, for what you hoped for either yourself or your readers, or what were you trying to do? Diane?
Thank you, Kelly. I want to very quickly just show you the final cover. Pardon my Post-it notes, but this is the way the book turned out. It got changed quite a bit from the original. That's real beadwork on the cover. So my hope, my intention in writing this novel was actually to ask questions about the way, to raise questions about the way that our relationship has changed, not only with seeds, but with the world around us, in particular, the earth, the water, the natural world around us. And that to see it across the course of several generations, you're able to see that change and some of the events that actually push people to make the decisions that they do. So in many ways, it's a story about women across generations and their struggle to protect what's really most important to them in their lives.
Yes, I'll show my paperback cover too, which I just got. And yeah, I think I wanted to faithfully put these real events onto the page, but I think my bigger inspiration and hope was to sort of show the intricate details of a whole life, and sort of all the little fragments of memory and facts that that render that life completely unique from any other, just by way of little ordinary everyday things we often take for granted. And so that was my goal, with the hope that it might be the kind of book that would lead the reader to indulge their own memories along the way, of certain similarities at different ages. So that was the hope.
I love Hieroglyphics. What a gorgeous book that is. And speaking of memories, and then I think I'll close with these comments. Anyone have any final comments before I do a really quick closing? Anyone have anything they'd like to add? Well, y'all are so wonderful to be with us today and to take a chance on this crazy festival that we threw together. And And I want to thank everybody who helped us put it together, including our sponsors for this, who they're just absolutely wonderful. Our folks at Libro FM, and actually, I think we're the official, Fountain Bookstore is the official sponsor for this particular event, which, go figure. Finally, so we've talked a lot about memories today. This is going to be one of my favorite memories. I've been book selling since 1989, and it's been a long and beautiful career, but and it's been really strange the last year or so. But moments like this have made the tough parts really worth it. So thank you for helping me do the job I love so much. And that goes for everybody in the audience too. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for getting through the pandemic and doing the incredible job of connecting readers and books.
Well, yeah. Keep on doing it until somebody stops me, and it's probably going to be my family because they're crazy. So
I'm just sorry not to meet everyone in person. We can all be together again. But thank you, Kelly. You do such a wonderful job.
Thanks, Kelly.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Nice meeting you all too.
You too.
Hope to see you again.
I hope so. Congratulations. Bye.
Yeah, you too.